Welcome. Prepare to have your mind blown as we take a look into 20 incredible facts that will make you say, "What? Really?" Did you know the term jaywalking was actually a sneaky invention of the automobile industry? Or that there's a spot in Panama where you can watch the sun rise over the Pacific and set over the Atlantic? And trust us, that's just the beginning. Now let's take a look at 20 mind-blowing facts you probably didn't know. Fact 1. The term jaywalking was indeed promoted and popularized by the automobile industry in the early 20th century, as part of a concerted effort to shift the blame for traffic accidents from cars and drivers to pedestrians. The automobile industry, along with related organizations, launched public relations campaigns to redefine streets as spaces primarily for vehicles. They needed to reduce public backlash and encourage more car usage. Jaywalking was introduced as a derogatory term. At the time, jay was slang for a foolish or unsophisticated person, so jaywalker implied someone ignorant or careless for crossing the street outside designated areas. Cities began enacting laws that restricted where pedestrians could cross streets, requiring them to use crosswalks. Campaigns included public service announcements, parades, and even mock trials to shame pedestrians into compliance. Fact 2. There is no such thing as a private beach in Australia. In Australia, the land below the high tide mark, known as the intertidal zone, is generally owned by the government. This area is considered public land and is accessible for activities such as walking, swimming, and fishing. If erosion shifts the high tide mark inland, the public boundary typically follows the new high tide line, meaning the newly formed intertidal zone also becomes government land. While private properties can extend down to the high tide mark, they cannot legally claim ownership of the intertidal zone or restrict public access to it. Fact 3. Due to decreased air pressure in airplane cabins, you are more prone to passing gas. Here's why. As the airplane ascends, the cabin is pressurized to a level lower than sea level pressure, equivalent to being at about 6,000 to 8,000 feet altitude. This causes gases in the body to expand. The gas trapped in your intestines expands as the pressure drops, in accordance with Boyle's law, which states that gas volume increases as pressure decreases. Fact 4. Samuel Morse, known today for the telegraph, was also a prolific painter. He created a 6 by 9 foot painting with more than 3 dozen Louvre masterpieces in miniature to serve as a textbook to American painters. A small Mona Lisa is in there too. Fact 5. Individual brain size can vary almost twofold among typically developing humans. In adults, brain volume typically ranges from approximately 1,000 cubic centimeters to 2,000 cubic centimeters. This is a considerable variation reflecting differences in overall body size, genetics, and other biological factors. Despite size differences, typically developing brains are remarkably similar in terms of functionality. The human brain is highly adaptable and its efficiency is not solely determined by its size. The brain's complexity and efficiency are far more critical than its volume. Fact 6. Robert Altman only earned $70,000 for directing MASH, while his 15-year-old son earned more than $1 million for the 5 minutes it took him to write lyrics to the theme song. Fact 7. In 2010, the Canadian magazine The Beaver, which had been published since 1920, officially changed its name to Canada's History due to issues stemming from modern slang and internet filters. Many of their promotional emails and newsletters were flagged as spam by email filters, making it difficult to reach their audience. The magazine wanted to modernize and broaden its appeal, particularly among younger audiences, without the baggage of outdated or unintended interpretations of its name. So the magazine rebranded to Canada's History, which allowed it to better represent its mission of educating readers about Canadian history while avoiding unintended associations. Fact 8. French toast originated in Rome. It was when the French brought the dish to America that it was called French toast by Americans. The French actually called it Roman bread for centuries. Fact 9. The richest person in the world was Mansa Musa, the 14th century West African ruler, perhaps equal to $400 billion in today's money. During his famous pilgrimage to Mecca in 1324, known as the Hajj, Mansa Musa traveled through Cairo, Egypt, with a caravan of thousands, including soldiers, servants, and camels carrying vast amounts of gold. During his passage through Cairo, Egypt, Mansa Musa distributed so much gold in gifts and charity that it caused significant economic disruption, leading to inflation that reportedly lasted for over a decade. Fact 10. Thomas Edison's son, Thomas Edison Jr., was an aspiring inventor but lacking his father's talents. He became a snake oil salesman who advertised his scam products as the latest Edison discovery. His use of the Edison name frustrated and angered Thomas Edison Sr., who worked hard to protect his legacy and reputation. He feared that Jr. H's actions would tarnish the Edison brand. Thomas Edison Sr. eventually took legal action against his son to prevent him from using the Edison name in these ventures. They reached an agreement where Thomas Edison Jr. would stop using the family name for promotional purposes. In return, he received a weekly allowance from his father, effectively paying him to cease the unauthorized use of the Edison brand. Fact 11. In 1928, millionaire Howard Hughes set a bizarre rule for his staff. They had to handle everything he touched with tissues or gloves to avoid germs. Later in life, he became a recluse, living in highly controlled, sealed environments to maintain cleanliness and avoid germs. Hughes's germophobia became so severe that he allegedly wore tissue boxes on his feet, possibly to avoid contact with germs on the floor. There are verified accounts that he kept jars of urine in his living quarters. Fact 12. According to the National Safety Council, the lifetime odds of dying in a motor vehicle crash in the United States are approximately 1 in 93. This figure can vary slightly depending on updated data, but it is in this range. Fact 13. Every person who has become a centibillionaire, a net worth of usually $100 billion, first became one in 2017, or later except for Bill Gates, who first reached the threshold in 1999. Bill Gates, the co-founder of Microsoft, became the world's first centibillionaire in 1999 during the peak of the dot-com bubble. Fact 14. In 1373, Bernabo Visconti had a tense relationship with the Catholic Church and Pope Gregory XI. The Pope sent 2 papal delegates to Bernabo with the official papal decree of excommunication. Infuriated by the excommunication, Bernabo arrested the delegates and made an extremely dramatic gesture. He demanded that they eat the papal document, which included the parchment, the seal, and the silken cord, as a sign of disrespect and defiance. The delegates were forced to comply with his humiliating order. Fact 15. Panama has a point where you can see the sun rise on the Pacific and set on the Atlantic, the only country where you can see it that way round. Panama's isthmus connects Central and South America and runs in an east-west direction. The Pacific Ocean lies to the south of Panama, and the Atlantic Ocean or Caribbean Sea lies to the north. The curvature of the country at certain points creates a rare alignment where, at specific locations, the Pacific appears to be to the east and the Atlantic to the west. One notable place is near the Isthmus of Panama, particularly around the Darien Gap or high vantage points in the narrow central region of Panama. Panama is the only country where this reversal occurs because of its geography and positioning between 2 major oceans. Fact 16. For cost reasons, American soap operas were recorded on tape instead of film. Because the tape recorded at 60 frames per second while film records at 24 frames per second, the motion in soap operas looked overly smooth. When Peter Jackson released the Hobbit trilogy at 48 frames per second, it was an attempt to make motion appear smoother and reduce blur, particularly in 3D screenings. Many people compared it to the look of soap operas because the frame rate was higher than the traditional 24 frames per second, making the motion feel unnaturally smooth. This reaction was a direct association with the soap opera effect. In 1902, one day after being jailed for a fight, a man named Ludger Silberus survived for 4 days, while the pyroclastic flow from Mount Pelée killed 30,000. His jail cell was a former ammunition storehouse with thick walls and no windows apart from one ventilation shaft. Though protected from the direct effects of the flow, Silberus was still exposed to extreme heat and inhaled hot air through the ventilation slit, suffering severe burns and injuries. He reportedly screamed for help for days before being rescued by authorities surveying the devastation. Fact 18. Norma and Bob Clark, a California couple who had a wedding in 1964, discovered 48 years later that they had never been legally married, since the pastor who married them had never sent in the couple's marriage license to the county record office. Fact 19. Lemons are not naturally occurring in the wild, they are the result of hybridization. Lemons are a hybrid of the citron, Citrus medica, and the bitter orange, Citrus X aurantium, which itself is a hybrid of the pomelo and the mandarin. This selective breeding created the lemon's unique combination of acidity, flavor, and aroma. The hybridization likely occurred in South or Southeast Asia, where citrus fruits have been cultivated for thousands of years. Fact 20. The United States publishes a quarterly list of individuals who have renounced their U.S. citizenship, called the Quarterly Publication of Individuals Who Have Chosen to Expatriate. Officially, the purpose is related to tax compliance and transparency. It serves as a record of expatriates who may be subject to the exit tax or other tax-related obligations under U.S. law. And there you have it, 20 mind-blowing facts that make the world seem just a little more extraordinary. From the surprising origins of French toast to the unbelievable survival of Ludger silberus, our planet, and its history, is full of wonders and quirks that never cease to amaze. Which fact blew your mind the most? Let us know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this journey through the unexpected, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, share it with your friends, and subscribe for more fascinating discoveries. Remember, the world is full of secrets waiting to be uncovered. Keep discovering one fact at a time, and we'll see you in the next video.